few years back, I got a call from my boss saying we just landed a job at a female prison and that I would be running the job since I was one of the only people in our shop that doesn't have a police record. And I'm thinking, fuck yeah, this will probably be an interesting job. So we load up a van and start heading out there, and we pull up to this really cool old brick building. It looked like it had some stories to tell, really cool looking. We had to pull the van into the Sally Port because we're going to leave the van inside because there's other buildings in there that we drive around to, and it's got all our material. So they had to check it out before we pull it in and look under it with mirrors, and we had a pile of sand back there. They had to poke it with sticks, make sure there's no one in there, and then we were allowed to enter. First thing I noticed when we got in was all the noise. It sounded like a party was going on, all the voices coming from over the wall. I asked the guy what the commotion was about, and he said it was because we were there. He explained that any guy not dressed in a security outfit, the women will go crazy over. And I'm like, fuck yeah. You see, normally I'm a 3, sometimes a 4 if I really do myself up, but in this bitch I'm an 8. So we get in, I walk through the yard and have to walk through them. Some of them looked pretty rough, but for the most part, they looked like, a nice lady who got mixed up with the wrong crowd. They weren't that bad looking. So we find the place where all the in-house construction workers hang out at, and we find our escort. We'll say his name's Tim. Now, for those of you who don't know what an in-house guy is, a lot of times when buildings are real big, like hospitals or certain hotels or places, they'll have their own crew of construction workers that just stay there all the time. And sometimes if there's nothing to do that day, you just read a book or do whatever you want. In-house guys have the reputation of being somewhat lazy as fuck. So we spend the next few days working on some of the cells, working on some of the buildings. All the inmates were super nice. They were very happy we were there. They kept saying, "Oh, you work so hard, John. John, this wall looks so nice. Thank you, John, for coming to work on our building." And I'm thinking, fuck yeah. It's about time someone realizes my talents around this goddamn place. One of the inmates kept bitching about having to leave her cell for me to work on it. So I noticed she was working on a jigsaw puzzle. I took one of the pieces out of the puzzle and embedded it into the wall in her cell just to piss her off. Another spot on the property I noticed was there was a section that had 3 rows of fencing up. I asked the guards why there were so many fences. He explained that a few years back when they were working on the railroads, one of the inmates got pregnant by a railroad worker through the fence. So that's why they had to add all those fences. So for the next couple days, I got to know the guards pretty well. I got to hear some of their crazy stories. They let me in their confiscation room where they keep all the confiscated shanks they find and paraphernalia. One of the most craziest things they had in there was a female toy made entirely out of Jolly Ranchers. Very innovative. So we have 2 days left. It's Thursday. We have to demo the ceiling above the kitchen and plaster it back in. We demo it out, and it's the end of the day, and I want to roll up the plastic. But Tim, our in-house escort, says, let's just leave the plastic down. We're going to be back in the morning. I really opted to roll it up because that's just a habit that we clean up after ourselves after the end of each day. But Tim insisted that we leave it down, so we left it down. The next morning, I go to the shop to get a van, take it to the job. We're going to clean up. It's going to be the last day on the job. And I get a call from Gary on my phone. You guys remember Gary from my last video. And he says, "What's up, brother? Just to let you know, I put an ounce of weed in that van. I didn't know you were taking it. It's for some of the other guys." See, Gary's not only our laborer, but he was also the drug dealer for the entire shop. So I'm like, fuck, Gary, I'm working at a woman's prison right now. And he says, you'll be fine. Just park way in the back where they won't smell it. Walking in that morning, I wasn't greeted by the friendly faces I was accustomed to. The guards seemed a little crabby that morning. I cracked a few jokes, but got nothing. They just stared blankly at me from behind their dark sunglasses. That's when the head guard stopped me and asked, "Do you happen to have a razor blade in your pocket?" Immediately, I burst into a sweat as I recalled the previous day's activities. I keep a razor blade in my pocket. It's one of those long snap-off razor blades, and when we were working on the ceiling, a piece of it snapped off and fell on the floor. Apparently, it slid under the dishwasher, and that night, one of the female inmates turned it into a security guard. Immediately, they had to shut down the whole prison, go into lockdown. The guards that were off work that day had to get called in. The prisoners apparently are allowed to stockpile like a year's worth of shit from the commissary. All that got taken. The guards were pissed at me. The prisoners wanted to fucking kill me. And all the while, I have an ounce of fucking weed in the van. It was really bad. The warden had to come down and fucking scream at us. I knew I should have rolled that fucking plastic up, but I took the blame and told everybody it's my fault. I look over at Tim and he ain't saying shit because he'd lose his job. So the whole time I'm freaking out like, fuck, they're going to search me. They're going to find a fucking ounce of Gary's weed in the van. But I ended up taking the blame for everything. The warden sensed that I was truly apologetic. I really did feel bad, and I'm freaking out thinking they're going to search me, find an ounce of weed in the van, charge me with a federal offense. But he sensed I was really sorry, and he let me off. I had to call my boss and tell him what happened. I'm thinking the boss is going to fucking scream at me. But he just kind of chuckled and said, well, I guess they're not going to be calling us back. Good thing they're shutting down in a year. So that's the story on how I turned the female prison into lockdown mode. But then again, that's just a normal Friday. Thanks for watching, y'all.